So now we're at the top 10.
Yes.
All right, let's go.
Number 10, this guy's 107, 6-2, another 3-division champ. Second most successful title defenses ever. I believe he had 23. He had an 87 fight win streak. It ended with a draw, and then he had 90 fights before his first loss. This is
Julio Cesar Chavez.
Julio Cesar Chavez.
Yes.
Julio de Culiacan.
Yes.
I don't think that anybody really has any.
There's no objections there. There's
Yeah, I kind of figured the top 10 will go a little quicker.
He's another you can catch these hands guy. Okay,
yeah. But that draw, that was what we were talking about with Pernell Whitaker.
Yeah,
where he really he caught the loss there. But
who was the one that he came back and knocked down in the 12th round? That was
Meldrick Taylor.
Meldrick Taylor.
Yeah, he knocked him down with seconds left in the 12th round. He'd been losing the entire fight, and the ref waved it off instead of letting Meldrick kind of run for 5 seconds.
Stand up for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So I guess the question I have is where did you guys have him on your list?
Let me see where I had him.
I had him 18.
I had him 11.
I had him 16.
I had him. I had him at 8.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So Mikey,
I just realized my list though. I misspelled. No, Brother Brodny makes fun of me. I misspelled one of the guys' names, and I apologize, Brodny.
It's all right. It's all right.
Jesus.
All right, so
I had him 18th.
Okay.
I had him 18th, especially being from a Hispanic household. Julio was revered.
Listen, everybody loved Julio. Like he was one of those fighters that like he was a transcendent fighter. Everybody was a fan of him.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it was like the FIFA Cup, and when he was going to fight, everybody was coming over. Right? Yeah, it was an event at the household. I remember going to my grandmother's house to watch fights. I didn't understand it because I was so young, but yeah, it was an event to watch him fight. I only had him that high because the record's impressive. 86 wins in a row is very, very impressive.
Yeah.
I go back and forth because as much as those wins are important, as dominant as he was, people I have ahead of him are I just feel like they meant more to boxing to me. Yeah. Like I had Archie Moore in my top 11. There's a couple other fighters we're going to talk about where, Joe Lewis was number 5 for me. Henry Armstrong was number 4 for me. So these were just people that I felt were more important in boxing compared to Julio. Julio deserves to be a top 10 fighter. For me, these people were more important for me in boxing, but I'm not going to argue why is he in the top 10 like I was with Larry Holmes or somebody else. But I agree that you should be top 10.
Cool.
So moving on to number 9, we have another heavyweight. The top 10's got several heavyweights in it. But this guy, I'm kind of interested to hear your response to this, Shug, because of what one of the reasons that you gave earlier with Andre Ward was the number of fights, like just straight up the number. He only had 32 fights. You think he should have fought more.
I think I know who it is, and I'll tell you why.
I got a guy here, 32, 4-1. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't a huge part of boxing history. Obviously, he was. Smoking Joe Frazier.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He's a gold medalist, undisputed heavyweight champion, first guy to beat Ali, in what was called the fight of the century. But yeah, so 32, 4-1. It's a few more fights than Andre Ward, but not many. Now, is it just the quality of the competition?
We'll talk. We had this argument the other day when we were talking about him and George Foreman. Why I didn't like George Foreman ahead of him.
Right. You ain't like George Foreman ahead of him because George beat his ass around the ring a few times.
Spit his head off. Spit it out.
If you go back and look at Joe Frazier, he really was doing the same thing as Muhammad was doing, and was there especially for the black community and stuff like that. But Muhammad, because of what happened to him, like a lot of people put Muhammad so high, and don't give love to Frazier like they should, and he was just as important to me, and he was a great fighter. The way he fought was so not the style he should. I remember watching a video on him where he talked about he would take 2 to give 1. Like you're not supposed to fight heavyweights like that. You're not supposed to fight heavyweights like that. And
you shouldn't fight anybody like that.
Yeah, you shouldn't fight anybody, especially heavyweights.
Especially the biggest motherfuckers they have to offer.
And to me, Joe Frazier, just the impact that he had. Look, Ferris and me have talked about it millions of times. If he stands up in that Thriller Manila fight and just stands up and walks out there, he's probably remembered more than Muhammad. But he did it. His corner called it. Muhammad was gonna pass out. He was done with that fight. And now we don't remember Joe the way I feel he should be remembered. Now I'm glad he's in the top 10. For me, I had him 10. Actually, no, I had him 10. So I'm fine with that. But I just feel his impact is more. Just for me, I feel Joe was just his impact was so big on boxing. That's just me. Compared to Andre Ward, where Andre Ward, I understand he was great. He was undefeated and all that stuff, but just to me, when I look at George Frazier, I feel his impact on boxing was so much bigger than what his record was. And that's
Andre was kind of overlooked even when he was fighting. That's certainly not the case with Joe Frazier.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Sid. I agree.
Yeah, I had Joe Frazier at 6. Now, keep in mind, again, I gotta keep giving that caveat. I left out some of the older guys, but I Sugar, you said it perfectly. Joe, I did have him lower than Foreman, but he was a part of quite possibly the greatest fight in history, as some would say. He was one of the better heavyweights in probably the best era of heavyweight fighters at one time. He was no slouch. I do agree that he doesn't get as much recognition for what he was doing in the community at the time. And shit, I met Joe Frazier, crazy enough, in an IHOP.
Wow.
And
oh my God, that is awesome.
And he was chilling, man. And I didn't want to. I was looking at him like, yo, that's fucking Joe Frazier. But like, I'm like, but why would he be here at this IHOP? You know what I mean?
All places to be.
And I like pancakes, bro.
Yeah. And like, so when I was leaving, man, I was walking by him and like, he knew I knew who he was, man. And he kind of stopped me and, said, he shook my hand and it was like, yo, that's Joe Frazier, yo. You know what I mean? And it was crazy, but he was a very nice guy. And if you look deeper into the story about him and Muhammad, it's sad because at one time they were cool. They didn't always have the greatest relationship, but both of them left this earth without
reconciling.
Yeah, and not I think Muhammad was in a different place as far as like I'm okay with Joe. I think Joe just had that. It got to him later on in life about just what you talked about, Shug, not the props that he didn't receive for what he did. And here's, Muhammad did receive all the love, and he should have. Not taking anything from Muhammad, he deserved everything he got as well. So that part of that story is sad, but man, Frazier was.
But I'll say this, and we can move on. But I will say this: look at the punishment psychologically Muhammad did to Frazier. The things he said to him and I'm not black, so all of you are, but the things he said to him as a black man to another black man were very hurtful. And like you said, Mike, when there's pictures of them later on in life, they're holding hands, they're embracing each other. But I think it was hard for Frazier because he never did anything to Muhammad. Look, it was a boxing fight. We fight. That's it. Muhammad made it very personal with him, and I love Muhammad, but he made it very personal.
He did a lot of lines.
He crossed a lot of lines. And later in life, like I go back and watch that documentary with Thriller Manila. I love that documentary. Watch it. Joe Frazier don't hold back. He goes, "You see why Muhammad's the way he is?" He goes, "I did that to him. Yeah, I did that to him because he ain't happy with the way how Muhammad treated him." And I think that's one of the knocks on Muhammad was he didn't have to do that.
Listen, yo, Sonny Liston pulled a gun on him, man. He pulled a gun on him.
Yeah, these guys are crazy. Back
something.
He was not well liked.
I'm just saying he didn't need it. He needed to do that to Joe to promote the fight, and he did, and it caught a lot of deep wounds. And which is why I feel like Joe doesn't get his props the way he should, because they're two of the greatest fighters. You're right; they had two of the biggest fights ever. Thurman and the fight of the century were two of the best fighters.
I know the gun was fake. It doesn't. But the point is, you got
nobody else knew that, Ferris.
Right.
Right. YouTube has the whole documentary of Thriller Manila. They document the before, the everything, and you know, and it just, I love watching that documentary, and it hurts to watch Joe, because he watches the fight, because I think Muhammad at the time died. He watches the fight and he gives his perspective of what was going on, and to watch that, it's really amazing to watch. But I just feel Joe, I really wish Muhammad would have really just reconciled with them, said, you know what, I apologize and things like that. And I think he would have been better. But like Mike said, he was an amazing man. I love Joe Frazier a lot. The fact that you got to meet him, that's freaking dope.
Yo, it was the most random thing, bro. I was just like, is that Joe Frazier? And who I can't remember who I was with at the time, but whoever I was with didn't know who he was. And I'm like, yo, that's Joe Frazier. Like, in an IHOP. And the only thing is, like, you know, I don't remember having a phone or anything, or even I didn't want to bother the man. Like, if I see people out, man, I try not to bother them, because I know. So I didn't want to be like, man, can I get a picture? But now I regret not getting a fucking picture with him. But
they just got a certain presence when you meet them, like legends and stuff. It's like you can sense like an aura around them type stuff.
Mm-hmm. So I agree with everything you're saying, man. Like, I agree with everything you're saying. Only thing I don't agree with is that he's not above George Foreman. I like him better than George Foreman, but I mean, he murdered him in the ring. Like, what do you do? Like it's not what, because we can't sit there and be like, oh, what, you know, if they were to fight, what would happen? We know exactly what happened. Like,
well, he hit him in the back of the head, Jose. Okay, go watch that fight. Hit him in the back of the damn head.
He hit him in the back of the head. He was in the front of the head. He hit him in the side of the head.
He lumped up his whole head.
Both of his temples and all that.
All right, so moving on to number 8, we got another heavyweight here. Overall record of 41 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. I could have sworn they had more losses than that, but I guess not. The Lion, Lennox.
The Lion.
Yes.
Lennox. Yes.
I mean, Lennox is a legend just for the fact that he called a fight with a blanket. Because he's like, I'm cold, bring me a blanket. And he just sat ringside with a blanket on, calling the fight. I loved it. But, you know, you thought about Joe Frazier and them kind of being in the greatest era for heavyweights. This is probably the second greatest, you know, when Lennox was fighting. And Lennox, I mean, he cleaned up, man. He beat just about everybody. And you know, this is a time where a lot of people did not want to fight Lennox Lewis. A lot of people tried to avoid fighting Lennox Lewis.
He got froze out for a long time.
Yeah. Because I mean, he's a huge guy. He had the long reach. He had all the skill. He had the power. Everything. You know, his only losses were to Oliver McCall and Hasim Rahman. Shout out to Rahman,
Baltimore legend,
Baltimore's own.
The thing is, he came back and he avenged both those losses. He came back and beat those guys.
Boy, did
he dominated Evander Holyfield. You know, he beat Mike Tyson. You know, anybody that you can really think of outside of maybe Riddick Bowe, Lennox beat. You know, and Vladimir
dropped the belt.
Yeah, Riddick ducked him. Yeah.
And Vladimir Klitschko at the end, but he put something on his brother though.
But you know, breaks off. It was Riddick Bowe. Like, so, you know, he was the least popular one. I think he held the IBF belt for a while. That's the one that Riddick Bowe dropped to not fight him. And it was our uncle that told us about Lennox Lewis. I was like, who's that? And he's just like, yo, nobody wants to fight him.
He's starring in Ocean's 11 is why he lost to Hasim Rahman.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. But
Baltimore's own, baby.
Be more zone. He still got the win. But yeah, man, like they avoided him for a while. And it wasn't all, you know, they're afraid to fight him. I think a lot of that had to do with promotion. He wasn't a Don King fighter. But yeah, when he got his chance, man, he like you said, like he beat all the great ones. He beat all the great ones of his era.
Yeah,
you know,
this is high for me. I mean, I have no argument with it. He wasn't in my top 10, but he deserves.
I had him at 15.
Yeah, I had him at 14, and but he deserves to get all the accolades and that he gets. Lennox was, I wasn't a fan of him because he came in knocking out a lot of my favorite heavyweights at the time, so I wasn't a fan. You know what I mean? But yeah, he was that guy. You know.
I think it's something to be said about those guys with like the real long reach that know how to use it. You know what I'm saying? It's one thing to have that reach, but it's another thing to have not only the speed but the power behind that reach. Because sometimes when you have reach, you're sacrificing, some power sometimes with that because your arms aren't as big or whatever. But dude was just complete package as a heavyweight. You really can't ask for more.
One of my favorite
that era. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, B.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, see that era of heavyweight boxing, man. Like you just don't see it in today's boxing, which is why I don't put any of these guys on the list because they don't move like those heavyweights did. Like they were boxers. Like when Anthony Joshua lost to what's his name?
Ruiz. That's right.
Ruiz. Yeah.
He put it up for us fat guys. I was happy as hell. I was like, see, I ain't got to lose weight.
I showed our friend Quan. I showed our friend Quan a clip of when Lennox Lewis fought David Tua, right? Because it was a similar style. Tua was a shorter guy that was aggressive, and Lennox, just completely just kept him away and just punished him, right? Yeah. And I'm like, that's what you do, right? But like these fighters don't know how to box.
They don't know. They don't know.
David Tua would dominate this era, man.
Yes, yes, he would.
And me and Jose were talking the other day, and he brought up David Tua, and I'm like, every time, like we've talked about him, or his name has come up before within, talks of rankings, but like I always forget about David Tua, but yeah. He would be knocking these cats out.
Tua would have fought everybody and probably would have won most of these fights. But yeah, you're right. Oh, I forgot about Tua too. That's funny.
Yeah. There's a lot of good heavyweights at the time, but like it was dominated by the great ones, and Lennox stood tall among all of them. So
I don't hate Lennox Ferris. I just didn't like he was beating everybody's ass, man.
That was my favorite one. He's one of my favorite.
That's how I feel about George Foreman. That's how I feel about George Foreman. So.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? One of my favorite things about Lennox, I think it was Lennox. I'm pretty sure it was Lennox. I don't know if you guys remember Michael Grant, the heavyweight. Like he was getting a ton of hype. Kind of came out of nowhere, and Lennox broke his ankle with a jab.
Yes, that was Michael Grant. That was Michael Grant.
Yeah, he fell in the face, and he fell down and broke his ankle.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I was look. I'm not trying to disrespect Michael Grant, but I watched that live. I was like, he didn't even hit you.
Yo, my favorite knockout for him was when he fought Shannon Briggs, and Briggs thought he was doing something. He hit Lennox with a good right. And Lennox just stood there and smiled at him and hit him with a 1-2 and dropped him.
Yeah.
It's always funny to laugh at Shannon Briggs, but Shannon Briggs was a good fighter.
He was a good fighter,
yeah.
It's always funny to laugh.
And what he did that knot that he put on Baltimore's own Hakeem Rockman's head. God, Lee.
Yo, I remember watching that fight because Rodman was putting his arms out too far, and Emmanuel Stewart told Lennox, "Hey, he's reaching out too far. So when he puts his hands out like that, you come around with the hook." And that's exactly what he did. He caught him with that hook and put him to sleep. And I remember hearing Stewart tell Lewis that, and I was just like, "Yo, put your hands in. Like he can hear me on the TV screen. I'm like, "Yo, bring your hands in," because he set him up. He's like, boom, boom, and he came around.
He's coming.
Yo, put him to sleep. And that's another reason why Emmanuel Stewart is one of the greatest trainers of all time. That's why it's important to have that kind of training in your corner. And a fun fact: when he lost to McCall, Emmanuel Stewart was McCall's trainer.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm not arguing that, Ferris.
I'm not mad at it.
Hey, listen, I couldn't like him around this town.
Stewart, yeah.
I couldn't like him around town because the knot that he put on Hasid Rock with his head was like, you know how hard you gotta get hit to put a
whole titty on somebody's head.
Only thing I can imagine something doing it like it's being hit with like a brick or something.
Or a baseball.
Bro, like
he looked like he got the brick sewn under his skin.
Yeah.
He ain't getting hit with it.
Like that was oh my God. How long you guys think it took for that to go down?
Yeah. So next up, coming in at number 7, I'll just say it, man. This is Suge's favorite guy. Big George Foreman. 76 wins, 5 losses. The only notes that I have here, he came back to win the heavyweight title at 45. At the time, it was a record, and a couple of big time wins over Smoking Joe Frazier.
First off, it was Michael Moore. Calm down, okay?
He was 45. Get excited.
It's Michael Moore.
Didn't Michael Moore beat Evander?
He did
the first time they fight. Yeah, Michael Moore was a good fighter.
Damn it! Yeah. Where's Michael Moore at in this list? Then
George Foreman made sure he ain't make it.
Look, fighting in 2 eras. Fighting in 2 eras is, that's just impressive, right? Like, like he did it to Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier wasn't washed or anything like that. He was a force of nature. He was their Mike Tyson of that era. He was their Mike Tyson.
Because the same way Pernell Whitaker was with Floyd, that's how George Foreman was as to Mike Tyson. I don't think you get Mike Tyson without a George Foreman.
Yeah. Need all of that George. Yeah.
I think the coolest thing I do like about George is the shorts that he wore when he lost to Muhammad. He wore those shorts against Michael Moore to win the belt. Yeah. That's kind of cool. That's dope. Because that loss to Muhammad, I think George talked about it. Like, he was distraught. Like, he did some things.
He had to send him into a depression.
Yeah, he said he did this thing where he fought like 10 people in one night, like, because he was so messed up from that loss. Like, he couldn't believe that first off Muhammad took the shots that he took, and then lost the way he did, and so it's crazy to think about. He comes back against Michael Moore to wear the same shorts you lost in your biggest loss ever. That's, like Bree said, sent you into a depression to win the belt.
Yeah,
that's kind of dope. That's a movie. That's a movie right there. That's dope.
And he talked about. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I was talking to my dad about that fight with Ali, and he was just saying, like, I'm not gonna, because my dad is like the biggest Muhammad Ali fan. Like, he's got a drawn portrait of Ali in our house. Like, he's a huge Ali fan, and when that fight was about to go down, like during the walkouts, Pop was like, that might have been one of the times I felt like the most anxiety at like a sporting event, just because. He thought that George Foreman really was going to kill Muhammad Ali, like really was going to do him dirty. But you know what I'm saying? But it turned out to be one of his favorite moments in sports history too. So
like
this man just struck that kind of fear in people.
You go back and watch it; it's amazing to watch. But like, if you were there, if you're around at the time, yes, like Foreman was going through everybody. He was murdering everybody, and Ali just coming out of prison. And Ali just coming out of prison, like, I'll take him on. Like, you thinking, oh, he's toast. Yeah. And just to see it unfold and just to knock him out, like
Ali wasn't coming out of prison.
Huh?
Ali didn't come out of prison.
He did come out of prison when he fought Foreman.
That fight?
Yeah. That was after he came out of prison.
What did he go to prison for?
For dodging the draft.
No, that was Frazier. That was Joe Frazier.
Yeah, it was Frazier coming out.
Yeah.
Was it Frazier?
Oh. Yeah, it's Joe Frazier. Coming out.
I think he was coming out of retirement to fight.
No, he wasn't coming out. He wasn't coming out of retirement. Coming against the George Foreman match. What happened was this is the fight between him and Frazier, where Frazier thought he won and Muhammad won, and then he got to fight George. But at the time, Ali had lost to Ken Norton, and they thought, but George had ran through Ken Norton. He ran through George Frazier. That's why they thought going into I can't remember the name of the country.
Zaire.
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 Yeah, they thought he was going to get killed because, like Deshaun said, because he had lost to Ken Norton. He got his jaw broken against Ken Norton, and the fight against Joe Frazier, he wasn't dominant. So they were like, "Oh, you're going to get murdered."
So real quick. So Holly wasn't in his prime when he fought Foreman.
No.
Yeah,
he was past his prime.
Because I remember the Ken Norton fight was like kind of sad to watch because I think that's when you kind of saw like he just didn't necessarily have what he used to no more.
Well, he got his jaw broken in that fight against Ken Norton.
After the Foreman fight was a year after the Ken Norton fight.
Yeah. So in the Ken Norton fight, he got his jaw broken in the third round, and they fought the whole match and fought the whole fight. And remember, this was 15 rounds back then. So imagine he fought 12 rounds with a broken jaw by Ken Norton. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Muhammad was not Muhammad Ali going into that George Foreman fight. So like your dad said, people saw this fight and they're like, why are they giving him this title fight? Because of his name, probably. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. He's going to get massacred. And I hate to bring it up. Brodny's going to make fun of me. But when what George did to Frazier, they were like, oh, he's going to murder Muhammad. There's no way he's going to survive this fight. And then he implemented the rope-a-dope, which would, against everything they practice in there in Africa, what he was supposed to do. He's supposed to move around the ring, all this stuff. He didn't do none of that. He said, I could take those hits, and he's going to get tired, and then I'm going to be able to knock him out. And people thought he was crazy for doing that, and then he pulled it off, which is why it's amazing.
But that's, but even though Frazier, resented him, all the way up till they both died, right? Was the trash talking, but that was part of his game, right? To get in your head, because even lead up to the fight, he was trying to get into George Foreman's head. Like Foreman was like he took Foreman off his game before he even stepped in the ring. Foreman went in there thinking, I'm gonna kill this guy for all the trash talking he's doing. I'm gonna just throw everything I can at him, and then he keeps talking to him while he's getting hit in the ring. Yeah, and he just tired himself out. Like that's what Ali did. He knew how to get into your head.
Chess match.
Yeah, the gamesmanship. He was at the top of it when it comes to gamesmanship and selling the fight and trying to take you out of it mentally. I had Foreman at 5 on my list. Again, it's modern era fighters. Forgive me to the 90-year-old people that's watching. But I had him at 5 because of some of the things you had already mentioned, Jose. But like, I mean, George was something different. He was something that the boxing game hadn't seen. Someone so powerful, so fast. A big guy. Like he was just. He was feared. Yeah, he was like a grim reaper. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, this dude is strong as hell. Like, I don't want to feel none of that. And the Ali situation happened, and we all talk about the rope-a-dope, and and I'm not taking anything away from that, but there's some that say that was a little overhyped or whatever the case may be. Whatever, right? He still won the fight, but George was a terror, and I think if he would have been able to keep himself mentally fit after that fight, because he wanted it so bad. He wanted it so bad. And when he lost, he went into a depression. If that wouldn't have happened to him, George would have even been higher on a lot of people's list than he is, on some of these top 100, top 50 lists.
He probably would have been over Muhammad in most lists. Had he got through that fight and either got through that after that fight mentally okay and carried on his career, because he was still dominant afterwards, but he just couldn't. Mentally, he was messed up, or could have won that fight. He'd probably be higher. So I 100% agree with you, Mike. 100%.
All right, so moving on to the top 6 here. At number 6, we've got one of those guys that we talked about who kind of, exist as that unit in that point in time in that welterweight to middleweight divisions. This guy is 103-16, and it's the hands of Roberto Duran.
This is pretty high for me.
It might be a little bit high. It might be a little bit high, but for me, it's hard to separate those guys.
Yeah, definitely is.
Yeah.
Like Suge had mentioned before, I had Tommy Hearns lower. I had him, down around the 15 to 17 area. And I think that it's the perception of him not being able to take a punch, kind of, him having a weaker chin. But the other guys, with Leonard and Hagler and Duran, it's so hard to separate that group. They're all intertwined. All fantastic fighters, obviously Hall of Fame, great fighters and everything. But, obviously with Duran, the thing that sticks out the most is the no mas, him kind of quitting on the stool, which, I mean, it's not great, obviously. It's not great optics, but I don't think it should knock him down that much.
Was he the only one to beat Sugar Ray Leonard out of that group?
I
we know Hagler did, but he got robbed. But
Hearns got robbed too in the second fight. Yeah, he was the only one that beat
he was the only one that officially beat him.
Yeah.
That beat him. In first off, how can you, Mano? I can't even speak Spanish. That's sad. But Hands of Stone is the greatest nickname ever. First off, that is an amazing nickname. But I understand where you're coming from, Deshaun, as far as and we were just talking about it earlier. I think it does the fact that he was, he beat Leonard, but he lost to Hearns, he lost to Hagler.
Yeah,
he's like the weaker of the four. Really, I thought it was Hearns that was, but now I reassessing, he's kind of the weaker of the four. But the win over Leonard was huge.
Yeah,
it was huge.
And the way he dominated that fight and how he beat up Leonard, and he was like Muhammad. He talked a lot of trash, and when he stepped over the line with because he's talking about Leonard's wife and everything like that.
Yeah.
And but he knew how to get in your head, and he got into Leonard's head to say, "You want to fight me one-on-one? You want to go mano a mano? You want to just throw hands? We'll do it." And he beat up Leonard, and then Leonard learned from the fight and messed with him in the next fight. There's a lot of controversy in that second fight. Roberto thought he was going to get an automatic rematch because of this. That's why he kind of quit. It was really this great win, and so he didn't. They gave him a short time to get ready for this fight. So there's a lot of controversial stuff. I still think he's a top fighter, especially top 10 for me. I did have him. I had him 6. So I have him right. Yeah, I had him right where we're talking at. So I'm okay with that. But I understand where you're coming from, Deshaun. And it did change my mind having a conversation where he is probably the weaker of the four more than we thought. Now that we've talked about it so much.
Yeah.
And I'm not even so mad about necessarily the 6. It's more so the gap between him and Hearns. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think if you were to put him and Hearns, I had them 12 and 13 back to back, respectively, and I thought they were just all so tight knit match. I feel like Hearns is kind of getting just left out because I don't think he was that much further behind Duran, honestly. But I realize you got to put in a lot of names on this list, so I mean it's a lot of names that could go on this list.
Yeah.
I had him above those guys just because he beat Sugar Ray.
Yeah, that's what did for me.
And
that's what does it.
I mean the work. 100+ fights. You know what I mean? Roberto was a beast, bro. He was Hands of Stone for a reason. He was knocking cats out too.
Yeah.
And I
and
mean
had
again,
luxurious hair.
And again, being a part of the golden era of that division, I mean, it says a lot, man. That might. Can we think of another division ever that was that stacked with that foursome? You know what I mean? It's hard to match up. So, I mean, to be one of the top guys at that time, man. I had him pretty high. I think I had him at 4 on my modern era boxer list. Yeah, man. I had a lot of respect for Roberto, man.